smashed, his jaw was cut in half. That's a typical reaction when a logger hits a spike. Now, you just said, I think just a second ago, that you were involved. There were 2 people convicted in 1989 of putting 500 pounds of spikes in an Idaho forest. Senator Rich mentioned this just a moment ago. You testified you sent a letter to the Forest Service on their behalf. I have it here. The letter says, among other things, this letter sent to notify you that the post office sale, that's the forest sale in Idaho, has been spiked heavily. The reason for this action is that this piece of land is very special to the earth. It is home to the elk.
Okay, so you just saw that clip, and if your jaw isn't on the floor right now, I don't know what to tell you. What we just watched is a United States Senator actually holding someone accountable with receipts. This is Tracy Stone Manning, Director of the Bureau of Land Management, and Senator Hawley just walked in there with a letter she actually wrote, threatening federal forest workers on behalf of eco-terrorists who spiked trees that nearly killed blue-collar loggers. And she sits in that position after swearing under oath she had never been investigated by any law enforcement authority. Ever. We're about to watch the full video. Pay close attention to her body language, her answers, and how Senator Hawley calmly and methodically dismantles every defense she tries to put up. This is what real oversight looks like. If you're new here, welcome. Hit subscribe because this is exactly the kind of content we cover. Real accountability, real politics, no fluff. And if you're already here, drop a comment and tell me what you thought of that clip. Did she answer a single question directly? I'll wait. Let's watch. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I start, Mr. Chairman, I want to say thank you for your strong statement on the RICA legislation yesterday and for your leadership on this issue. It's much, much appreciated. Director Stone Manning, let me just start with this. When you came before this committee in 2021, this is before I was a member of the committee, you were asked as part of your confirmation whether you'd ever been investigated, arrested, charged by any federal, state, or local law enforcement authority for the violation of any federal, state, or local law, regulation, or ordinance other than a minor traffic offense. We asked that question of all people before the committee. You answered no. Do you stand by that testimony?
Senator, I do stand by that testimony and was proud to be confirmed to do this job.
What's tree spiking, Director?
Senator, again, this committee engaged quite a bit.
No, that's a factual question. Do you know what it is?
And I do. It is.
You want to tell us? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's when people illegally put metal objects into trees so that they prevent a timber sale.
What happens if a chainsaw hits a spike?
Sometimes when a chainsaw hits a spike, it can buck the saw.
Yeah, violently recoil, potentially kill or seriously maim the loggers.
Yeah, which is why I notified the federal authorities that I had heard that happened.
Loggers like, for instance, George Alexander, this is from an article on the Washington Post explaining what happens when trees get spiked. Loggers who are blue-collar workers, by the way, these are not wealthy people. These are not people who have had the advantages perhaps you and others have had. People like George Alexander, who, for example, in May 1987, at age 23, his chainsaw hit a tree spike. I'm quoting, his face was slashed from eye to chin, his teeth were smashed, his jaw was cut in half. That's a typical reaction when a logger hits a spike. Now, you just said, I think just a second ago, that you were involved. There were 2 people convicted in 1989 of putting 500 pounds of spikes in an Idaho forest. Senator Rich mentioned this just a moment ago. You testified you sent a letter to the Forest Service on their behalf. I have it here. The letter says, among other things, this letter sent to notify you that the post office sale, that's the forest sale in Idaho, has been spiked heavily. The reason for this action is that this piece of land is very special to the earth. It is home to the elk, deer, mountain lions, birds, and especially the trees. It goes on, I would be more than willing to pay you $1 for the sale, but you'd have to find me first, and that could be your worst nightmare. P.S. You bastards go in there anyway, and a lot of people could get hurt. Why'd you send this?
Senator, as I said at the time, over 30 years ago, a really angry and turns out violent person handed me that letter and said, will you send this to the Forest Service?
And you did. Why?
What you just talked about in 1987 to a logger, this is 1988, 9. I understood that people could get hurt.
Why didn't you notify the federal authorities?
was-
Why did you send this threatening letter on behalf of these two men who were convicted of crimes?
I was terrified of them and wanted no involvement with them.
You wanted no involvement, but you sent a letter that says, you bastards go in there anyway, and a lot of people could get hurt? Why didn't you just contact the FBI or anybody, any local authority?
Because the person who did this act threatened people's lives if they disclosed who did it.
Yeah, in fact, you were investigated for being involved, weren't you? Here we have a letter sent to this committee from the special agent of the USDA Forest Service, Michael Merkley, who was in charge of the investigation. He says, and he details this in the letter to this committee, that he investigated you for your involvement. He says, and I'm going to quote now, grand jury subpoenas were issued for hair samples, handwriting exemplars, fingerprints. These subpoenas were served on persons suspected of being involved, having knowledge of the incident, including Ms. Tracy Stone Manning. You've testified you were never investigated, ever for anything. Why'd you lie to this committee?
Senator, this committee delved deeply, went into the court records where I testified against these men.
Were you issued subpoenas?
No.
You were not issued subpoenas?
I was issued a subpoena to appear before a grand jury with
Really?
with
Because
about 30
here's what he
people.
says. Ms. Stone Manning was extremely difficult to work with. She was antagonistic. She was uncooperative, refused to provide her hair, handwriting exemplars, and fingerprints as ordered by the grand jury. It was not until after we informed her she would be arrested if she did not comply with the subpoenas that she provided the samples to me. So you were subpoenaed.
Senator Hawley,
you
your
were
time
the
is
target of an
expired.
investigation.
Do you have a question?
You were the target of an investigation. You lied to this committee. Why?
Senator, I never received a target letter. I'm curious, I understand why this committee jumped over 30 years of my career in considering my nomination and went to a salacious moment from graduate school where I tried to protect people. What I don't understand is why we're not looking at the last 3.5 years now.
Here's why.
Senator
It's because people are killed in these kind of incidents. It is an act of
Your
terrorism.
time is expired.
A special agent in charge found that you were involved. You lied to this committee in saying that you were never investigated.
Senator
you were never
Hawley.
the target of investigation. In fact, you were.
Your
You
time
lied to us
is
blatantly,
expired.
and you know it.
We've seen all of it now. And I'll be honest, I've watched a lot of congressional hearings, and what Josh Hawley did there is one of the most prepared and focused pieces of questioning I have seen in a long time. Let me break down why this matters. First, the tree spiking. I want to make sure people actually understand what we're talking about here because it's easy to let it become background noise. This is not abstract. George Alexander was 23 years old. His chainsaw hit a spike someone deliberately put in a tree, and his face was cut from eye to chin. His jaw was cut in half. He was a working-class guy doing a dangerous job to make a living. And the people who set that trap are exactly who Tracy Stone Manning was writing letters for. Don't lose sight of that. Second, Senator Hawley didn't come in hot. He didn't grandstand. He didn't make it about himself. He asked a clear yes or no question. Do you stand by your testimony? And then built his case brick by brick. That is preparation. You can disagree with Hawley on plenty of things, but in that room on that day, he did his homework and it showed. Third, her answers. Or the near total absence of them. At every critical moment, she deflected. She talked about her career. She mentioned graduate school. She said she was terrified. But she never gave a straight explanation for why she sent a letter ending with the words, "You bastards go in there," and a lot of people could get hurt. That is not the language of a scared, passive bystander. That is someone who is deeply embedded in that world. And then the grand jury moment. That's where her credibility falls apart completely. She told this committee in 2021 she had never been investigated. But we now have a letter from the special agent who ran that investigation saying she was subpoenaed, she was antagonistic, she refused to cooperate, and only complied when threatened with arrest. That is a direct documented contradiction of sworn testimony. Full stop. She argues she never got a formal target letter, and technically that's a legal distinction. But being subpoenaed before a grand jury refusing to give fingerprints and hair samples, being told you'll be arrested if you don't hand them over. If that isn't being investigated, then words have lost all meaning. The bigger picture here is that this woman was confirmed to lead an agency managing over 240 million acres of American public land. And the people who voted to confirm her either didn't look hard enough or didn't care enough to ask the questions Hawley asked. That is a failure, plain and simple. What Hawley did in that room was give a voice to every logger and forestry worker who doesn't have a title or a PR team protecting them. And that matters. I'm not here to tell you what to think. Watch it yourself and draw your own conclusions. But from where I'm sitting, Hawley came in prepared and fought for accountability, and Stone Manning could not answer the most basic questions honestly. That should concern all of us. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did she answer his questions? Do you think she was being truthful? If you got value from this, a like and subscribe helps the channel more than you know. See you in the next one.